Hello, everyone. I am Beth Y, and you are listening to Between Two Beths. Topic today is permission to change. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself, and then I will hand it over to Beth Meek, and she can tell you about herself, and then we'll dive right in. I am a certified life coach. I'm accredited with the International Coaching Federation, and I'm a transition specialist. How I got here, it was a journey that took several years, but my husband passed away unexpectedly in November of 2019, and it happened on my birthday. As we know, for many of us, the world shut down due to COVID just a few short months later, and I spent about 2 years in near isolation. And during that time frame, I read a book about coaching. And so I got very intrigued. And I wish the coaching tools and coaching was more mainstream back then, is probably what I needed. I did go to counseling, but it didn't do it for me. And I was at a point in my life where my career, I worked for the federal government, it just didn't fill my cup anymore. Something was missing. And so I lived in the immediate Washington, D.C. area. I opted to sell my property. Um, and I pretty much, I built a small house and I moved closer to be with my family. And then I went to school for a year and became a certified life coach. Um, so what I want to tell you is that coaching and therapy, counseling are very different. So therapy and counseling deals with mental health issues, whereas, and it goes to the past, right? It goes to the root cause. Where coaching is forward thinking, and it helps to identify some of the fears or the blocks that are holding you back from getting what you want. So with that caveat, I'll hand it over to Beth Mead.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome. And thank you, Beth. Yes, I am Beth Meek. I am a holistic nutrition and health coach turned champion for the midlife caregiver. What got me here, like Beth was sharing a bit of her story, I was a caregiver for two times so far in my life. The first one was my mom with Parkinson's and dementia, and that was at a distance until it wasn't, until I had to move there. And then the second one was more recently, just within the last couple years, a friend in town had had a stroke, needed a place to recover. She came and lived with my husband and I, and that actually became kind of the learning grounds for me to put some of what I had learned already from my mom's experience into practice, the implementing of what I had learned. It's interesting that you say, Beth, that you wish coaching had been a bit more mainstream and more popular option when you needed it because you felt it was what you needed. I too, what I do now with caregivers is what I didn't find that I needed, especially when I was caregiving for my mom, that was in 2015 to 17. So that was even just before Beth. And so I do have digital products. I do coaching and everything and have some programs, but um, enough about that. Beth, I'll hand it back to you. That's just a little about me, and we can start on the topic.
Okay. Permission to change. Who would you be today if you gave yourself permission to change? I think that's a very interesting question because so many of us don't. So many of us hold on to the person that we were and the guilt associated with this yearning, maybe to change and to move forward. What will people think of me?
Yes.
So, widowhood, I can tell you, changes everything. The future you planned is gone overnight. Poof. You didn't just lose your spouse, you lost your dreams, identity, and often your sense of direction.
Yes.
In the beginning, survival is the goal. So, how does that align with caregiving, Beth?
Yeah, it was interesting as I was thinking about the topics that we were going to talk about today. Well, the topic we're talking about today. Um, I realized that permission is a little different in caregiving than it is when you're a widow or when you have lost your loved one. I remember having lost my mom, and my life did change, but it's different because she wasn't my spouse, and it didn't really change a lot of those dreams like you just said. But the permission I see for caregivers is the permission to care, to actually take care of themselves, to actually do the things alongside of caregiving. And caregiving does take that main focus in your life. I'm not suggesting that it doesn't, but there has to be still some focus and permission to still live part of your life and some of what you lived. Um, I lost my job when I had to be caring for my mom. So my lifestyle, getting up and going to work full time, changed dramatically. I didn't do that. I would go back and forth flying because it was cross country until again I didn't, and then moved there, and then there was no job. My job was solely for my mom, but I needed to give myself permission to actually take care of myself on that journey in the same way. Um, and I think for caregivers, and sometimes it's for women in general, but for caregivers in particular, we look for permission from the outside, from external sources, whether it's someone on Facebook or, an influencer or a best friend or your spouse or, the person you're caring for. You want them to say, go ahead and take care of yourself. And so often they don't. So really, permission has to be an internal job, and where caregiving is concerned. So Beth, what are your thoughts on that?
I like the notion of caregiving or taking care of yourself is an internal job because it parallels with widowhood, right? Um, you feel like people are maybe somewhat, you feel like you're being judged to a certain degree if you
Yes.
start doing these things, right? You start taking care of yourself, you start moving
Moving
forward,
on.
you
Yes.
start having some fun. And it doesn't happen right away. It's a journey, and everybody's journey is different. But um, many people feel that changing means leaving their spouse behind. And you're not leaving your spouse behind.
No.
Uh, that it was something that happened to you,
Yes.
not something you wish for.
Mm.
But you are absolutely, your life is completely different than what it was before. Um, so it's okay to reach out and do those things that bring you joy and bring you happiness, whether it be travel, new friendships, or even new goals.
Yes.
After my husband passed away, I realized that, I had been doing my job for some time, but it didn't fill my cup anymore. Not
Yeah.
that the job changed, I changed.
Right.
And I realized that even though it was a somewhat prestigious job, um, and it was keeping my bank account full,
Yes.
it wasn't fulfilling me.
Yeah.
And so when I made that decision to change that goal and go back to school, it it, it did something for me, right? It fulfilled to a certain degree a side of spirituality in
Yeah.
me, because it gave me purpose again.
Yeah.
And there's other things too. I was just telling Beth before we started recording, I'm getting ready to leave for Portugal on September 1st. And while I did travel with my husband, he enjoyed traveling, but I have kept it up, much to many surprise. Um, I usually take at least one big trip a year. And I love experiencing new cultures
Yeah.
and just, immersing myself in it. So, family and friends, they're all well-meaning,
Yes.
but they can consciously or unconsciously expect you to remain the same person, and you don't have to. Thoughts, Beth?
Yeah. Well, I think that's amazing. You hit on so many good points. First, I wanted to go back to what you said about being judged both as widow and caregiver widow for moving on, possibly, and maybe not doing things the same as you did when you were married. And for the caregiver, it's being judged for taking care of yourself, taking time away from your responsibility and caring for someone else just to take care of yourself, even if it's in a small way. And most of the times, that's all we have. So I think that is an amazing place for both the people who are listening because they're a widow or because they're a caregiver, or some maybe both. That permission to change is very pertinent. And to me, it kind of goes to acceptance. Um, I bet when before you were able to really get out and continue living and changing and things like that, you had to go through, and you said it didn't come right away. You had to go through that time of the grieving process,
Mhm.
right? And it's not the same for everybody, of course, but that once you hit acceptance and start accepting what's happening and what is going on for you now, just as the caregiver accepting even that the mom I knew was changing, my relationship with her, that acceptance, I was able to have a new relationship with her. I was able to do things differently with her. And so for you, your acceptance was that you could start moving on, doing some of those things that both of you and your husband loved to do, but continuing them, maybe without the pain, but almost in an honoring way. And so I think that's really good. And I don't remember your last point because I wanted to go there. Um, um, but anyways, maybe it wasn't important for me to say too much more about that, but I think that was really important. And I think the important two thing to remember about permission and change is that it doesn't have to be big, um, right? It doesn't have to mean that, your spouse liked to do this and now you have to change and want to change and be something completely different. You're still you. It's just that, as Beth said, your dreams have changed, a lot of what you do. You're doing it by yourself or with a friend as opposed to your spouse. So there's going to be some natural changes to that, and they don't have to be big. And they don't have to be big at first. They might become big, but they don't have to be dramatic. They can be in small things. What do you think, Beth?
Um, yeah, I think, change can be as big or as little as fits the need.
Absolutely.
Um, and sometimes in a way it becomes cumulative.
Yes.
So it
Yes.
starts like, maybe with small change and a small change. And then for me, I had a big change. And that was when I decided to leave my position with the federal government and go out on my own and move. And for me, it was the right thing to do at that time.
Yeah.
Um, I think what's unique for my situation was that, um, you know, it happened and it was right before the holidays. And then shortly thereafter, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so, my timeline was longer because of extenuating circumstances.
Yes.
And, I think, one of the things too that you said earlier, it kind of like bell went off in my head was, when you're a caregiver, right, and you're a caregiver for a parent, I think as children of parents,
Mhm.
offspring, we all expect that we're going to outlive our parents,
Yeah.
right? It's just math.
Mhm.
I mean, there's, times when we don't,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean it's less painful when it happens. But when you know that at some point it's probably likely to happen, right? And even though your mom had Parkinson's and dementia, right? And I'm a part-time caregiver too. Um,
Absolutely.
I have a 91-year-old mother who has dementia. And it takes the village. And there are six of us in that
Yes.
village right now. Seven if you count my aunt that are, um, but yeah. But the one thing is I really want people to understand when you're thinking about change. Um, it's not a betrayal. It's a new beginning.
Yes. Yes.
Um, it's not moving on. It's an it's almost like a reinvention of yourself. Okay. And it's an investment in yourself. And as a caregiver, and you like to say care, it's a nurturing of the person that you're becoming. So it's different for
Absolutely.
everybody. Um, but give yourself permission to laugh, give yourself permission to feel joy. Stop explaining your grief timeline. Um, I know one of the things that kind of always, I was always didn't sit with me well. That's how I will say it. Was that after COVID and the world started opening back up again, people were saying things like, "You should get out there and start dating again." And I'm like, I kind of felt like that 2 years didn't count, right? Because we were in isolation. So people were expecting me to change at a pace that
Yes.
I was not yet ready to change at.
That's
So,
right.
even expectations subconsciously or consciously put on you by people, maybe they don't align to your expectations and you're in what you want in life right
Yeah.
at that time. And it's okay to say, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Beth?
Yeah, I think that's really important. I love that you said, well, let me do your current thing first before I go back because I don't remember. Yeah, i- it's different for everybody, right? Just
Yeah.
because someone else thinks you're should be this far moved on or or this far healed or in this step of the grieving process, it doesn't mean that's where you're at. And I think that's an important thing to remember when we are the friend of either a widow or a caregiver or someone who is trying to encourage and help and walk alongside this
Yeah.
person is they don't want us to say, I think you should be here, or why don't you do this? They just want you to be their friend. And
Yeah.
you know what? As friends, we can talk and we can say, you know what? Maybe it would be good for you to date Beth or whatever, but it's also good for you in that friendship to say, I'm not ready yet, or whatever. But we can't put something on someone that they're not ready for it, both in caregiving and as in the grieving process, because caregiving is a grieving process, just a bit of a longer one, right? We're grieving what we had. We're seeing the end. In some cases, I'm fortunate to have had both sides because my friend that I mentioned first is fine and living now on her own in an assisted living place. She didn't she didn't pass. We just helped her in the journey to recover. So that was a blessing too. But I want to go back to not a betrayal. So you're moving on, and I know you said not moving on, but your change isn't a betrayal. And it's not a betrayal in caregiving when you take care of yourself, that you're betraying that care for your loved one. And I think a lot of people feel that. And we don't need to justify that. You said it a little differently. You don't need to justify where you're at, what you're doing, why you're doing it. That's your business, your personal business, as long for the caregiver. And Beth, you know this too, as long as you're making sure they're taken care of and things like that, then you have nothing to justify in making sure you're taking care of yourself as well. So, with that, Beth, we've covered a lot today. So I'm going to pass it back to you to actually, yeah, you pass it back and you just finish up and whatever you're going to have to say here at the end.
Well, I've been sitting here thinking, and I would probably pose two questions for people that are listening and watching that kind of don't have to answer right away, but think about it. Really think about it. What part of your life feels stuck? And what change have you been resisting?
Yeah,
Give yourself permission to evolve.
yeah,
Even in the absence of being a caregiver, in the absence of experiencing widowhood, we all evolve.
that's right.
So why are you giving yourself permission in those circumstances and not here.
Yes.
You've been on this journey. You you deserve to live your life again.
Yes.
So with
Most
that,
definitely.
I'm going to close it up. You can find me at beyondcoachingbybeth.com. Beth Meek, they can find you where?
At bethmeekcoach.com as well. And I meant to change my thing and I didn't. I will before our next recording. But yeah, bethmeekcoach.com.
Okay, and thank you all. If you have any topics you'd like for us to discuss, please feel free to reach out to us. And we would welcome the opportunity for you to share these videos with anybody that you think can
Yes.
benefit from it. We do not advertise either one of us. So referrals and word of mouth is pretty much how we build our business. So thank you and see you next time.
Awesome. Bye, Beth.
Bye.
Oops.